recap of today's biggest news stories, stocks, sports, weather, and more. Here's Mark Hahn.
Hey, happy Monday here. And as I said to Woody, it's kind of a sad ending to the Explorer season, but a great season and a record-setting season nonetheless. Right now, let's say hello to Dr. Tracey Wilen. How are you?
Very good, Mark. Thank you for having me.
All right, you back home in L.A.?
Well, I'm in Los Angeles, and it's very hot. It's about 100 degrees.
Wow. Watch out for those wildfires out there, too. You got the Santa Ana winds and everything else going on. All right, you were back here in, the Siouxland area. You were over in Nebraska, and you had talked about basically how people can put their best foot forward. Is that kind of give you the Reader's Digest, sum it up?
Yes, and, I continue to look at the theme of how people can position themselves either in the workforce or in their careers and job moves. And I always look to the media and the press for ideas about things that we can learn from. And right now, I think that, all we're seeing in the news is all about candidates, and I said there's lots for us to learn from them.
Be a candidate. Matter of fact, you have a blog that you just put out, tips for branding yourself for the job or a promotion, just like a presidential candidate. Now, who do you think, who would get an A, in your opinion, as far as the candidates go? Now, we had discussed the Democratic debates haven't even started yet, so we're basing this right now on the Republican debates. Who's put their best foot forward?
Well, I think each candidate has done something that has provided value to us, whereas, whether in our workforce or looking for a job. But in terms of rebranding, I would have to say that you look at the outsiders, right? So, for example, Carly Fiorina has done an outstanding job of rebranding herself from a high-tech CEO to a presidential candidate. I think Ben Carson from a neurosurgeon to a presidential candidate. And Donald Trump, because he's rebranded himself a few times, real estate to entertainer to presidential candidate. And all of us, at some point in our life, have to establish a brand, but we also may need to rebrand ourselves for different kinds of jobs and opportunities.
Well, one of the ways that you are a very strong advocate of branding yourself is through social media. And that means young and the folks that are a little bit more advanced in their years, and I'm not talking about retired, I'm talking about people who are still in the workforce, but yet need to shake hands with social media to become a little bit more accustomed to it. What's the best way to do that?
Well, I'll tell you, Mark, most people, adult and professional would use LinkedIn, because that is sort of the digital Rolodex, so to speak. It's a quasi job board. That's where recruiters go. That's where hiring managers go. And that's where basically salespeople go to find people, look at their profiles. And I think that's a good start for people in the workforce to position themselves. And I'll tell you why, that as you're looking for a job as a candidate, you could be a passive candidate, right? I can't find you. And if I'm a hiring manager or recruiter and I can't find you, I don't know that you exist. So you have to make a little noise. And social media gives us a way to become visible. And whether it's putting up your profile and all your assets and experience and skills on LinkedIn, or writing a blog on your expertise, using Facebook or some of the other social media, or tweeting about important things, this is how you can become more visible to the workforce.
There was one section in here that talked about employed for life, 21st century career trends. And you have 11 books that include Women Lead, Perspectives from the Workplace Leaders. Give us a little bit of your background again. Remind people about who Dr. Tracey Wilen is.
Sure, and thank you. So, my journey has been through different types of companies in the Silicon Valley, and that's really where I'm based, working for companies such as Apple or HP and Cisco, and then moving in various, career moves, lateral moves, leadership roles, all the way from an individual contributor up to a vice president. And I also have done research at Stanford University as a visiting scholar, and what I looked at was really how technology changes society, work, women's leadership opportunities and careers, and I really pulled it together. And so now what I do is I speak globally on these topics and write a number of books, and really more modern days, I write a lot of blogs on some of the more pertinent points that we should think about, whether we're in women aspiring in leadership or whether we're an individual looking for a job or for someone in a company who wants to get promoted or, move into the leadership track.
Now, you talked about Donald Trump in particular. You're talking about marketing yourself like a candidate, rebranding yourself, and you talked about the various phases that Donald Trump has gone through. What about an elevator pitch? What's an elevator pitch? I imagine it's a Reader's Digest version of your resume, right?
Well, no, actually, an elevator pitch is very interesting. If you remember in the debates, both debates asked each candidate, they gave them 30 seconds to articulate a message about themselves, and that's basically an elevator pitch.
Okay.
If you could envision yourself getting in an elevator with someone who can significantly change your life, well, your work opportunities, what would you do when the door closed and you're going from floor 1 to floor 5 and you have 30 seconds? Would you stare at the floor? Or would you look at that person and have a memorable 30-second statement about yourself that summarizes what is unique about you and what you have accomplished? And if you look at these candidates, right, each one is given that opportunity at the beginning of the debate, and they change them. And that's why I think it's interesting to watch these debates, because they're thinking through, okay, I have to introduce myself to America. I'm vying for a top, highly competitive, visible job called the president. What do I want them to remember about me in that 30-second instant, right, view at the first step? And each one has, an elevator pitch, whether they're very conservative, whether that they're, real, each one will have some, I'm an outsider, and so I'm not going to be a career politician. Each one has a message that they want you to take away.
Well, and it's also football season, so everybody always hear about the playbook. You need to have a playbook for the interview as well, correct?
That's right. And each situation, you can have a different playbook, just like football. So, for example, a lot of people commented that Carly Fiorina had one playbook when she was in the first debate because she wasn't on the main stage. Then she had a different kind of playbook for the second debate because she was on the main stage. And, each candidate needs to think about when they go into an interview, or in some sort of debate with, or even on a, TV or radio station or speech, what am I going to say? What is the salient points, the strategies and tactics that I need to use during this session to maximize the most of it, depending on the audience, depending on the people who are watching me? It's the same thing with candidates when you go into an interview. Have a playbook. What is it you're going to say for that job, for that particular hiring manager or firm?
There are several other points there, too. Now, Dr. Wilen, if people want to find out more, of course, they can pick up your book, they can read your blog, but how do they get to your blog?
Sure. So actually my blog is in a couple of places. You can come to my website, which is TraceyWilen.com, TraceyWilen.com. But it's also pushed out to LinkedIn blog, and it's also pushed out to Tumblr and a number of places so other vehicles pick it up. But you can just come to my website and find your way through there. I also tweet about it on, at Tracey Wilen, and post things on Facebook as well.
It'd be a good idea to follow Dr. Wilen on the tweets in the Twitter universe, as so to speak. You mentioned Donald Trump. He wrote the book, The Art of the Deal, right? And that really kind of falls into negotiating tips. A lot of us, I think we maybe fall a little shy on the negotiation side of things. Maybe we just don't put enough self-confidence in there. I mean, if you have self-confidence, that's a great start. What's the best tip that you could give to negotiate?
Sure. So number one, I don't think it's an art. I think it's a skill that anyone can learn. But my tip is that, to be prepared, particularly for candidates. They always get very anxious about salary negotiations, so you need to be prepared for the salary negotiation by knowing exactly what you're worth, knowing what are some, if you don't get the salary offer that you want, you have alternatives such as, flex time or vacation time or hiring bonus that could make up the difference. And, and always negotiate before you accept the offer, right? The hiring offer. People accept the offer and then they say, oh, I crossed the line, now I'm in, now I want to negotiate. It's too late. Get everything that you want before you start the job.
All right, that's always a good point. Dr. Tracey Wilen has been my guest here. We're talking about how you can be a candidate, not just a presidential candidate, but we're talking about a candidate for a better job. And again, how do they find you?
My website is TraceyWilen.com, TraceyWilen.com.
And follow her on Twitter as well. Dr. Wilen, thanks for being part of Drive Time Live today.
Thank you, Mark. I really appreciate it.
This isn't a commercial.